On a cold, rainy day, with warm coffee, what better task to do than to play a game of Go using your favorite opening? Well, that's what we're doing right now, and welcome back to ROC Season 2, Episode 11. I apologize, I couldn't get a video out last week. It's really just been too crazy back then. Hopefully I can get back on my schedule. So yeah, apologies for that. Let's see what we have here. So it's been a while since we've rolled the mini Chinese. We only have 3 wins at 5D. So potentially this will take a while. Something that I've been wanting to try a lot is this attachment. This is sort of the new meta for the the Chinese opening setup, as well as the mini Chinese opening setup, which is the small avalanche variation. So of course, white doesn't really want to hane to my attachment, because then white doesn't have an extension, right? But then if we play the small avalanche variation, then white is trying to develop on the upper side. So here's where the small avalanche comes in, and how the stone here would help. I think for those of you who are Dan players, it's really useful to know about this. And white just made a very crucial mistake because everything dies here. Well, that's interesting. Okay, so this is a good example of, if you play the avalanche, you have to be careful. Oh man. So white's supposed to protect by extending out or playing the bamboo shape. That's the only way. And then black will block, and that's the critical move, and the move that I wanted to talk about. So make sure if you play the small avalanche, at least you're aware of those particular variations. At this point, this is just going to be I'm just going to play the Joseki. There's really nothing too much about this game, really. It's going to be pretty straightforward, I think. Okay, I'm just going to hane and cut off the outside stone. Whoa, is that a move? Is that a thing? Oh wow, very interesting. So white is using the ko threat here in the upper left to start the ko. It's a very interesting thought, but unfortunately, the code isn't very heavy for black. So it's not really going to affect black really that much. And with each code threat that white is making, white's actually giving me protection. White's using up the variations here, because with each move, black is capturing the group with less forcing moves. Right? So you can think of it as white is going to run out of options later. Oh, as I spoke, I actually made a big mistake there. I wasn't able to get that exchange. But it's not a big deal because, well, I'm not really trying to get those, right? I'm just trying to simplify the game. White got separated here. So that's going to make it very easy for black to deal with all to build the upper side, because now the white group needs protection. Okay, so this is a turning point because now black has a decision to extend out or play the safe move. And as the best student in the class, I'm going to play the standard move, which is the safe move. When we're ahead, we definitely want to prefer the more, how do you say it, the variations that are clear and take less risk. So right here, that's what I'm doing. I'm just playing a very standard variation here. Just avoiding any fights that my opponent might want to try. Okay, all of a sudden my opponent is playing super fast. I wonder if this is their tactic here. And it's actually really hard. I know I've mentioned in my videos before that it's important trying to not get affected by the opponent's speed. But as you know, that I get affected a lot by the opponent's speed as well. So it's really hard. I guess the important thing is to just know what you're doing, right? If you stick to what you're doing, then you don't have to worry too much about following in your opponent's thoughts. So I think that's the main tactic that I would go with. But of course, if your head is clear enough, then you could just have your own thoughts and not get affected by the opponent's speed. I think I can just, oh no, it's a gote cut. I guess I'll just attach them. Okay, now I'm just going to cut this off. Okay, now my opponent's just playing really quickly again. But this time I think they're probably just in denial. Anyway, the small avalanche is an interesting variation, I think, if you are reaching down level, that you should definitely think more about. It's this type of variation that if you get very clear in your head, then it's going to step up your reading a lot. And it's also not that uncommon of a variation. I think one would, expect to see the small avalanche here and there. So I think it's definitely a worthwhile joseki to study a little bit, to both improve your reading and that it's common enough so that you're bound to see it sometime. Okay, so now it's just, I think I'm just pretty much finishing the game. And here we go. That was relatively fast. I think the main thing for this is that, if you're not really sure about the avalanche, you should definitely at least read a little more before you play your next move. And the tiger's mouth here was probably White's biggest mistake of this game. So make sure White plays the bamboo right now. here at f5, or extend out. But I think the bamboo is much more popular. Okay. All right, that was a pretty quick game. Let's see what we get. Yes, yes, redemption. Here we go. Let's hop on to Six God, and I am so excited. Okay, and last week I got overly excited there. But I think the logical thing to do here is to leave the redemption to the next episode. We'll have a full episode to just play out the game, commentate it, and review it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to roll the next opening and save that for the next episode. Okay, so let's go to double 4-6. All right, back to the 4-6 point. I think after doing the ROC for 2.5 seasons already, no, not quite 2.5, but after doing so many episodes, I've realized that I've actually much preferred these openings where that don't really depend on black or white. It's just it's a lot harder to play the openings that require black. So I think my idea, if I ever do this again, would be to actually just have a style, and then especially for the openings that don't necessarily that necessarily depend on black or white. So it's like, instead of like a Sunset opening, maybe I'll just have like a cosmic style opening, for example, and I think that would work a little bit better compared to these ones that I'm doing now. At the moment, I'm still relatively happy about how the things are going, but that's just, I guess, one thing that I would do a little bit differently compared to now. Okay, so I don't know why my opponent played the star point on the side here. This is very much against a lot of opening theory, right? These two stones are not really worth anything. So I'm a little bit confused. It's clear that now black has 3 corners, so black is doing way better. A lot of you have commented on my videos that what you're learning a lot is how to handle the sort of these winning situations. And I'll tell you a little bit about like my own experience with that. So pretty much until I was about 7 Dan, I wasn't a player like that at all. Or even until I became pro, I wasn't a player that could just simplify the game very well and carry a game that I'm ahead in all the way to the end. It's probably one of the most difficult tasks in the game, is win a game clearly without giving your opponent any chances. So it is a very difficult thing to do, and it is a skill that I really, very, very slowly accumulated over the years. So I guess just if you're still working on that, just know you should think of it as a slow process where you're just making your moves more consistent and on point. It is very difficult to do that. So I think it's important to keep something like that in mind, especially when you're working towards it. Okay, so it looks like I can capture the stone. Do I extend? No, I think capturing is a little bit better. Okay. So, this is a very good life and death problem. And I'll give you 2 seconds to determine whether it's alive or not. Okay, 2 seconds now. It's already alive. So the problem with White's strategy right now is this space is simply not big enough. So I can really just, well, that's what I'm doing now, but I'm just going to ignore it because it's just too small to make an impact. And I don't need to invade. I can just develop my own stuff or slowly poke into it later. The potential is just not big enough to balance what black has on the lower side as well as these corners. Okay, yeah, this is something that I expected. White will definitely invade. So I'm going to block in the corner because I think I don't want white to live inside. There's nothing too much I can do right now with influence. So I'm just going to attack white. I think white would probably... Oh, wow. Crosscut. That is something that I didn't expect. I think I'll just extend here. I want to prioritize the corner. I think it's going to be worth more. Okay, I'll just capture the corner then. And then, because white has escaped here, I'm going to have to worry about my stone. I'm going to have to extend back from it after white fixes the cutting point here. Oh, wow, okay. White is playing a very aggressive move. White doesn't want to fix that and pincer. Capturing the white stone here is a very big move. Oh, wait. White's just attaching under. Okay. So then I don't want to capture. I want to force the sente here and then make it so that white doesn't live. It is really important that when your opponent invades, that you keep them worried. If you don't, as long as you don't let your opponent make a group completely alive, they're going to be owing moves, which will allow you to solidify the rest of your territory. That's probably one of the most important aspects when your opponent invades and you're the attacker, but you know you can't completely kill them. So you have to make sure that you adopt this strategy. So I'm going to keep the pressure on white. And I really wanted to get the push, but I think if I push now, white's going to Atari in the middle, which I don't really want. But white's locally not completely alive, so with each move that I play, white will have to push, and white's going to help me enter their potential in the center. And that's actually a very good result for me, because after white invaded, I've made the lower right corner completely solid. And also I got a little bit more on the left, and white has a weak group, but more importantly, I got these center stones to reduce white's center. The only thing that I am a little worried about is this invasion on the left. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that. It is a very severe invasion because white is very thick in the upper part of the board. And if white invades, it's going to be difficult to deal with. So after that, every single territory that black has is completely solid. And now all we have to do is either reduce that a little bit or make a little more on the right. And these two are pretty much me. I can either make some territory on the right, or I can just jump in and keep reducing white's center moyo. So it looks like it's actually a very clear game at this point. So I can just jump in. I'll just make a two-space jump here. This is the type of game that I think every single pro would love, because it's like you have a lot more territory than your opponent, but every single group on the board is strong. So it's actually kind of hard to lose the game back. Yeah. So we can see that all of black's groups are very solid. I can actually keep going in. There's there are a lot of things that black can threaten now because the center control is pretty much back to black. If white responds to my peeping move, I could pretty much regain the center control, like either a 2-space jump or something similar to that. The most aggressive thing I could do is connect this out and then jump out. But I don't think that's at all necessary at this point in the game. Okay. Yeah, white's definitely realized that they need to be more aggressive at this point of the game to do well. But it's not something I'm worried about at all because I have so many stones in the center now, and I've also solidified left. So really, white's just overplaying at this stage by trying to, well, win the fight. Okay, so the 2 stones have died here. And we've won the fight already, actually. Probably the most complicated variation for white is to extend this back. But black would not be worried about that because, first of all, the knight's move and extend will be able to connect back to the right. But also, black can simply Atari and keep pushing because the connection in the upper left is Sente here. White can't simply accept capturing a few stones in the middle there. I'm just going to capture this. I mean, like, what's that going to do? Yeah, so at this point, this is also very, very, it's very certain, right? There's nothing white can do to increase the uncertainty here. And we can see here white is trying and trying, but it's not going to make a big difference. I'm even playing the very laid-back move here. It's a very defensive move that I'm doing here. Haunting on top would be much more aggressive, but I'm just going to play very defensively to showcase, you don't actually need to make things really complicated when you're ahead. So everything here is really clear. It's not a ko. Right? It's you can just. It's actually not even that complicated. Just Atari and connect. Very, very simple sequence here. White cannot attach. So even if white could attach, black could just haunting outside, right? It doesn't really do much. White connects, black just connects. So there's nothing to do here. What I really didn't expect is to have such a simple and clear game from the double 4-6 opening. I did do a lot of solidifying in the beginning because my opponent didn't really play a very good opening. They started taking the sides, and I think I'm safe to say that white definitely played a terrible opening. You don't want to jump on the side 2 spaces in the opening without the corners being approached. So I think I should be safe there, not having any ambiguity here that white is just playing a very bad opening. And one of the first things we should learn in the opening is to, well, take the corners. That's what we learn when we just start out. Okay, what is this Gote move? I just jump or something. So simplifying the game is a difficult task, but it's difficult mainly because all the moves you play have to be exactly on point. Like any move that's just a slightly more aggressive, your opponent can catch it. But then your moves can't be slow, right? You have to find the right moment, the right balance in your moves, and I think that's generally the hard part. really the moves, it doesn't require very difficult reading. Of course, it does require a certain amount of reading, but it's nowhere difficult reading, and it's not 20 move reading. It's mostly in your judgment and when can your opponent start a difficult move. Is my move too slow? Those are the things that you do need to consider when you're trying to be safe. So I think my knight's move in the middle was not really that meaningful, but at that point I didn't really know what to play. I think I could play the start point knight's move or something at J4. That might be a little bit better. At this point, it doesn't matter because white died in Gote here and just kept giving black extra moves. I don't even know what to do at this point. Just do one space jump here. That's a pretty big move, I think. White can do some Sente probes here. Okay, fine, I'll connect this back. And there we go, a very clear, simple win. So, going back to the very safe and solid type of moves, a good example of a more solid move that I played is first this extension here. There's also a solid move that I played, which is the Atari. Right? Of course, I could jump out and then have a lot of groups going on, and I could start the fight, but that's not very necessary. When black cuts, if white Atari, black captures, white connects, black could still choose to escape that out, or just clamp, or just keep making points, right? So that would be an example of a relatively solid move, but it's still locally a good result. And those moves are very good when you're trying to simplify the game to extend the lead. All right, let's roll one more opening for this episode. Let's do it again. Okay, I'm getting a lot of large numbers in this whole season. It's interesting. If you're wondering, by the way, for the 4-6 point, I only need 5 games, so we're gonna have a 7-dan double 4-6, which I think a lot of you guys are anticipating. So I think that would be quite interesting. Okay, let's hop on our high I account. Finding the opponent now is on the order of 5 to 10 minutes because everyone resigns when they see your record. It's been a little bit frustrating, but it's okay. So we're back on the high I now, and it looks like my opponent's playing a regular opening in response to our relatively uncommon one nowadays. Okay, interesting. The 3-space low pincer. Okay, so I'm going to play the knight's move because it's a very far away pincer. So I'm not really worried that black will push and cut. I guess at least I'm a lot less worried that black will push and cut. A very comfortable move like this is if you actually get the forcing moves. Black is very uncomfortable when black is forced to live, because all I have to do is enclose, and because this group on the right is separated, it has to clash with the corner territory and this corner territory to make sure that it has enough eye space. So in these situations, it's actually not very ideal to make a group alive when it's completely surrounded. Not to mention, it's a very inefficient territory because white, like all these diagonals are going to be Sente moves, and you have to keep making sure it has 2 eyes, and so on. So I'm playing a very common invasion for a 2-space extension. I've never liked the translation for the go term for this move. It's called a placement move, which it's like doesn't really make sense. It kind of does, but it's the meaning doesn't come across. So I've always not liked explaining this to other people. It's not really like a placement, as in you're just placing a stone there, right? It actually has a lot of meaning behind that placement action, which is not reflected in just calling it a placement move. So that's something that's, I guess, in Asian languages, it's just that one character, but that one character reflects a lot of other meaning and other sayings associated with it, which unfortunately is not being captured at all here. I think my opponent made a reading mistake. Because it looks like black might get captured here. There is a diagonal that can help black break through, which will complicate things a little bit. But okay, so I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll jump here because I think this move might help a little bit with the fight when black diagonals here. This jump also protects against the cut, which is why I'm playing a move in this local area. I'm not protecting that because if black cuts, white would be in trouble because white can't ladder the stone and stay connected. We're already going into very complicated territory here because black will now try to break out. I think I'll just connect here. And a tiger's mouth. Okay, so unfortunately I won't be able to get the bamboo exchange or Atari exchange. So, well, this is a bit of an awkward shape, actually. I would like to Atari to the left of the cutting stone, but there could be some issues with that. If I Atari on the left, the capturing race will also be very complicated. So I definitely have to make a... Okay, I'm gonna go for it. Okay, if I fail, that will also be an interesting game because then I'll have to come back from behind. So I'm just gonna Atari and extend and go for the capturing race. It looks like I have a disadvantage, and I can tell because black can descend, and black has quite a few liberties here. Black is going to Atari now, descend, and then enclose. And that's when the capturing race begins. Wait. Huh, is that a Sente move? Huh, that's interesting. I really want to get this tiger's mouth because when black extends, it's Sente. Also, when I get the tiger's mouth here, when I push and cut, black is going to have connection problems. I'm not really too worried about black breaking out and fighting the ko, because I can still just capture the corner and it would still be a better result for white. So I'm not really too worried about this Atari move. As long as black can't just capture something on my outside, I think I will still walk away with a profit. At this point, black can live. But at least my group is solid enough. So I'm still walking away with something. I also got the connection on the first line, which allowed me to directly jump inside black's corner. So black's territory is already being reduced. Not to mention I got the tiger's milk here, which allowed me to push and cut and capture the corner. It's interesting that black Atari here first. That's not what I expected. Okay, this will be an interesting code then. Yeah, that's a code threat, and yeah, so black is just looking to live, which I am definitely okay with. Like, this outside is just, it's a disaster for black. It's calamitous. It's so bad because the 3/3 point is vital for the 3 black stones. The outside white is just really too solid, and black is only alive with 4 points on the right. Not to mention the upper right is mostly gone. So white is very much ahead at this point. Definitely would like to go over the fight a little more, because I feel like the fight is very interesting. At this point, black is just so much behind due to the local loss. Okay, so let's play a slide here. It's a pretty big move because when black encloses, this move might threaten the corner. Black is doing the same thing again. I'm surprised that they play the one space extension again. So the story of this game has to be this sort of shape. If you get enclosed, it's just very uncomfortable because, especially when you have groups on either side that you have to protect, it's just very hard to protect them well. And in either case, when you get surrounded, you're going to have to spend extra moves that are very inefficient to make it alive. So when it doesn't have to happen, it's actually very important to prevent that. Okay, I'm going to descend first because I think there's a potential cut there. And descending also puts a lot of pressure on the black group here. How do I reduce the liberties here? Oh, that's an interesting question. I guess I'll get away by not having to think about it. I don't really want to think much about reducing the liberties here. First, it's very complicated. If I can just escape, that's a much clearer result, because even if black lives, black is still small, and as long as white can escape, these other groups also need protection. Okay, I have quite a few choices now. It looks like a lot of the black groups are in a lot of danger. So like this group on the left, for example, it's not completely alive yet, and white only needs one more move to surround. So black is protecting that, but then there's just so many things I could do now. Okay, I'm gonna Hane and should I connect? Push here. And then if black exchanges this, I can clamp. And I'm not really too worried about losing those stones, because as long as white breaks out, black still has a lot to answer for. So if we look at this variation here, we should be able to spot the issue here with the black stones. I think the simplest thing I can do is just extend here, and then the net would actually just work. Yeah, definitely there's a lot of options, but remember when you're in this situation, you have to be very accurate in your options. You can't select one that look like it's working, but then, chances are it could just not work. Yep. So the way for white to capture the black stones in the middle is to attach first and then net. White can't net directly because black can clamp, but the attach first guarantees it prevents the escape. We did end up in a pretty complicated fight, which probably is not a good example of being solid. But I think that in any point in this fight, I had pretty much it under control. There was no way for black to do anything in the middle of the fight. Okay, and here we go. I think that one big mistake black made was first this extension was probably not the right idea. You always want to approach corners first. But I believe that's probably because my opponent doesn't like the high eye Joseki, so probably they're just avoiding it. But that's not a big deal. So in the middle of this fight, black had a really good chance just to capture back. It's very difficult for white to respond to this move. After that, white would have to either capture this and let black capture in the middle. There's a lot of benefit for black if black can connect these two groups rather than living by themselves. Right? In the end here, white's just super strong, and that makes it a lot easier for white to control the rest of the game. So black really needed to do something else here. Maybe even throw in and then capture. Yeah, but I think, yeah, in either case, I think black needs to do a little bit better here. What I was a little bit worried about when I said I was going to extend in the middle, let me see if I can, oh no, I actually can't review it directly. I think it's useful to talk about this variation since I did mention it in the game. Let's open the file here. Okay, I'm going to try to make this a little bigger. Yeah, so at this point, after this Atari, black should always actually exchange that first. Black can enclose, because this is Sente, and then enclose. Because if white Hane is now, black could jump and finish the enclosure. And then now it's just a question of how does this capturing race go? And that's the part that I mentioned I was relatively uncertain about. So I was ready to read this a little more, explore the possible variations for that. Okay, but in the game, what black did was it just let white connect too easily, and that was a relatively simple and clearly favored white result. All right, so we know exactly what we're going to do for the next episode. So the question is, will we complete our redemption, or will we have to wait at least 5 more games before we get the next chance? So that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for supporting our channel, and feel free to subscribe and check out our membership videos, Patreon website in the description right here, and I will catch you in the next episode.